National Planning Standards, it's item 12, and I think that commences at about 84, 75. Lindley, welcome along. Lindley Wilkinson's the lead planner on this and the author. And Lindley, this is a comprehensive submission that you've put together here. A lot of good work, great analysis, and thanks for representing Auckland on this one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just do a quick sort of summary of the planning standards and the process the Ministry for the Environment developed to establish them and what the purpose of, because I think it's quite important to keep that in mind, because these are national planning standards for all of New Zealand, and it's to try and achieve consistency in all the Resource Management Act plans that we have around the country. It's also to improve accessibility, so it's getting them into a digital format and standardising some of the common content that plans have been struggling with over the years, particularly sitting in definitions or metrics with regard to noise and vibration. So this sort of idea of standardising our plans has been floating around New Zealand for quite a long time, particularly at the beginning of the Resource Management Act. And I think Ministry for the Environment were asked for templates quite a lot, but they struggled to develop it, or as we all did, we struggled to identify how plans should be structured to be a lot more accessible to the public. So we've seen the release of these first set of planning standards as draft. The Resource Management Act requires them to be gazetted in early April next year. So there is a very quick turnaround for the Ministry for the Environment to look at the submissions and finalise them. We in Auckland Council have been working very closely with Ministry for the Environment staff in developing and trying to get them to understand how our unitary plan is being structured, how the layers work, how the various planning tools work for our unitary plan in particular. However, we do have the most complex and largest plan in New Zealand. I mean, we combine all our planning documents that are required under the RMA, whereas other councils, if they're unitary, they might combine their RPs and their regional plan, or their regional and their district, but no one else has done the whole three. So we are a bit of a single council out there, and with the largest plan. So the Ministry for the Environment, I think they believe that they've given us a favour, and they have allowed us 7 years to incorporate these standards, whereas a lot of the other councils have got 5 years to incorporate the standards. So they've identified councils that have just been through a recent full plan review and given them a little bit of extra time. However, looking through these standards, and you'll see in the submission attached to the committee report that we've actually really scrutinised each standard and the impact it will have on the unitary plan to get a feel for what sort of changes will be required. And there's quite a lot of potential or significant implications for our plan if these standards go ahead on the same track that they're on. So they've given a zoning framework that we are required to choose zonings from, but the zoning framework does not cover the full sweep of zones that our plan uses. So there's lots of little scenarios like that where you can see they started with the framework or the structure or the tools that we've used in our unitary plan, and then they've scaled it back because they are pitching these standards at a more medium-sized sort of single type plan council in New Zealand. So yeah, so it has been a little bit disappointing for us to see that they didn't quite get what we were trying to achieve in our plan. And we feel that some of the standards will actually significantly unpick the plan, because we will have to move content that is sitting in one zone and put it into either another zone, combine it, or try and come up with another tool. Some of the definitions that we actually really support, because they're very simple definitions, and will actually, if these get standardised across New Zealand, it takes a lot of the arguments out of the court, so that's really good. However, because they are very simple definitions and we've got like a 2-page version of the same term, we would have to change our plan and either develop new policies or new rules or new standards to pick up the components of that definition that aren't in the standardised definition. So those are just a couple of examples of where we think this will actually result in us having to incorporate these standards as a full plan review. We can't see any other way of doing it. So the 7 years to incorporate these standards would mean we would need to start looking at the plan again about 2 to 3 years earlier than that 7 years. So our submission requests for a 10-year requirement for Auckland Council, and because we still support standardisation of structures in some terms going forward. We think that might be helpful, but we just need more time and we need to tie it in with our monitoring requirements of the plan. And we do think that Ministry for the Environment staff will be open to us. They have been very good at involving us in discussions throughout the country. We've attended numerous workshops and they've been seeking our advice on many things. So we think they will be open to this, to the individual submission points that we've made, as well as the request for 10 years. But once again, it is the Minister's decision on that time frame decision, I think.
Thank you, Lindley. Now I'm going to hand to Councillor Hulse, who's going to move this, and Deputy Mayor, would you like to second?
I want to ask a question.
Question first?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll reserve the second for you, yeah, if you choose. Councillor Hulse, you'd like to move, and then there is possibly an addition, members, but I would like to just hold the addition, and the addition is that we also have our Mayor Phil Goff write to the Minister of Local Government, the Honourable David Parker, on this matter. But if we can just sort of, because it, is it Honourable Mahuta, or is it Environment? Sorry, it is actually to the Minister of the Environment. Sorry, and I do have that noted here. So if we just park that one, and I will go to Councillor Hulse.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I don't have a huge amount to add, but I think there may be some discomfort with, pushing back strongly on government or on Ministry of the Environment on this. But I've read the submission in detail, and I think it is an excellent submission. And the overarching point that you've made, which is we don't have a problem with standards. It's just we've been working, and I think the Chair put it really well. It's been 6 years of working through the complexity of the unitary plan, and we're now just starting to come out of the other end of this extremely complex process to have an agreed unitary plan and to go back and renegotiate standards that are not standards that are necessarily relevant to Auckland. And, the idea of going back and renegotiating with the good people of Auckland different concepts of density and different words for zones, I think is untenable. So, this is yet again the kind of Wellington approach, which is well-intentioned and kind of badly executed. So, there is, I hope, an opportunity to submit in person on this, that we'll have a good senior crew of elected members and staff that go and make these points. But it's not that Auckland is asking for a special case or asking favours. It's simply that we've done the unthinkable and produced a complex unitary plan in an incredibly short time frame with a minimum amount of legal challenge at the end by planning standards. So thank you for an excellent and well thought through submission and the examples that you give in here, and it's entirely appropriate sitting here in this house that you challenge the fact that basically the mana whenua have been kind of expunged from various parts of the regional policy statement work. It does seem exceedingly odd. So I think we need to not quite wrap the submission around a brick and throw it through a window in Wellington, but we will take it with firmness and clarity of thought and huge, very fresh experience to explain why the standards can't be implemented in the way they are trying to do.
Thank you, Councillor Hulse. And question from Acting Mayor Cashmore.
Yes, thanks. And I quite agree with Councillor Hulse, but we've done all this work really. We're going to review our program. So does the Ministry of the Environment understand the work that we've gone through? And if they do, then why didn't they just exempt us from this work, because we've already done it, which would probably be an easier outcome for all concerned. Although your submission is good and very, very thorough, I sort of quite like the idea of the brick, actually. It's because you get a bit over Wellington dictating things that we've already done and done better than what they envisage. So my question, ma'am, with all due respect, is do you believe they understand? And even if we send, Councillor Hulse, who was the author of the unitary plan, and the mayor to Wellington with a wheelbarrow full of bricks, will we get through?
I do
Tough question, Lindley.
Yeah.
How many bricks should we take to Wellington?
I do think the staff and the Minister do appreciate the complexity and the scale, the resources that is taken to develop the unitary plan, because they were involved in the hearings process and setting up the IHP, the Independent Hearings Panel there. I think they would have thought about exempting Auckland, but it's probably not going to go down so well, leaving Auckland out of the mix. A lot of the pressure for getting consistency across the plan came from people like infrastructure providers that work right across New Zealand. So Auckland plays a big part in dealing with those stakeholders. And this is a tool that is actually going to be used more and more. This is just another tool that sits along national policy statements and national environmental standards. And this tool will not go away. This is the first set of standards we're seeing. The next lot will be all content-based. So this is getting the structure of the plans set up, and then the rest that will follow will be content. So, yeah, I think that we should be asking for the 10 years and to get them as lined as closely, or give us the flexibility to have the plan as we've got it structured.
I will second this, Chair, but I am, alarmed at the prospect of this. It needs to be forcibly delivered to Wellington, quite frankly.
Just behind you, Councillor Cashmore, the screen's behind you. The C, would you, and Councillor Hulse, it's not really a brick, it's a letter. And should we add that and look at supporting that? Now, just by way of background, to discuss this with Lindley, there has already been discussion, and Lindley and our staff, Director of Strategy, Jim Quinn, have been communicating, and maybe it just takes a little while for things to land on the right desk in Wellington. We're hopeful, but I would be quite concerned if we had a bill turn up that did not reflect our input, and the fact that we've taken Aucklanders through a really exhaustive process, and I think there's big risks here, and they are cost risks, they're immense, and they're risks of confidence with our community. To go through that again would be absolutely enormous. I wish well to the chair who might be doing that. So, another question from Councillor Walker, or comment. It's moved and seconded.
A combination of both. First off, in respect of our suggestion that we want 10 years, given that it's my understanding that we're interested in a rolling review of our unitary plan, is it conceivable that within that 10 years there would be parts of our plan that would be a fit with the Ministry for the Environment template. Is that what you envisage?
I mean, we did look at that option because we have got two rather large plan changes looming ahead, like the Hauraki Gulf Islands plan change for one, and it would be very nice if we could do it in the structure and the templates that are set out by the standards. The trouble comes with definitions, because we would have to do the plan change with its bespoke set of definitions if we were to use the National Planning Standard definitions. But what we might do is actually pick up some of the standards, because they've released them as individual standards. So maybe we can, I don't know, I'm just thinking from the top of my head really, whether we could pick some very simple standalone standards, do the plan change in that format, but leave other standards till later. So we will certainly look at it, but timing is a big thing. And once again, also, we're pushing through the digital platforms. The e-plan side of it is something we always wanted to go anyway, so we fully support that.
And that makes it easier for us in many respects to make some changes.
Yeah. I mean, one thing we really hoped was that the Ministry for the Environment actually supported the software for all the councils, because we saw that as a simple win for achieving consistency, but they haven't gone that way.
And I guess the other matter that I'd just like to raise is just some commendations to the officers on the detail that they've got here. I think it's a pretty compelling case, and I would suggest that there is actually some significant merit in what the government is proposing in principle, you know, around standardisation. So I wouldn't want to see some bricks thrown at the government around that. But the arguments that we're putting certainly around timing and obviously the costs, the time to our community and the like are significant. My concern is that I don't think that we've really adequately conveyed those costs, and not just the cost to our officers, but the cost to our community in terms of time and the like. I mean, it would be horrific. I just don't know how we'd cope, frankly. And I certainly agree with the notion that it be escalated in terms of the involvement of the Mayor and whoever else. It's pretty serious.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Councillor Casey.
Just to ask a couple of questions about the process. We are foregoing consultation with the local boards and foregoing consultation with Mana Whenua because of the rush to get this in 10 days' time. So what is the process if the government in its wisdom decides it knows best and they're going to hang on to their new standards, which might be completely at odds with our unitary plan? At what stage or what's the time frame for them coming back to us and for us to kind of, what happens next after next Friday?
So submissions close in end of next week, and there is no hearing process. The Ministry for the Environment staff basically do a summary of submissions. They'll be running some technical workshops on topics that they didn't fully understand, or submissions have raised bigger issues, and they'll pull some council staff up to discuss those, and then they'll be making a recommendation to the Minister. I think they want to close all that off by the end of this year, so that the recommendation to the Minister on the changes to the standards is with the Minister at the beginning of the year, next year. And then it goes through the normal process of, I don't know, it's probably some sort of, it doesn't come out as a bill, it just comes out as a planning standard, similar to a national policy statement. So no further opportunity for us to do an input, and then when the standards come out and we have a time frame to incorporate them, some of it's mandatory, as I've indicated in the committee report, that we don't need to consult with the public on, we just go and do it. However, the zoning framework was discretionary, and that's discretionary because there's a choice of zones to pick from, whereas in our case, I mean, we won't be picking, we'll be picking them all because they didn't give us enough, but we will, need to identify what zones merge into which of the standardised zones, and we would need to go out to the public and consult on that. So it's not the content of the zone, it is the choice of the zone. But you can, you know, the content will come up and the location will come up in the discussions. So that at the moment is the only discretionary standard that we would need to consult on.
So I don't feel any better after that answer. In fact, I feel a whole lot worse. And I don't think a letter from the Mayor is going to do it for me now, that this, if there's no input, there's no hearing, so we can't go and rattle spears en masse, as we should do about this, because it's ridiculous. So a letter doesn't do it for me, so can we think about something that's a bit, you know, more than a letter? Like, how about the brick in a parcel with the letter?
So I raised this matter yesterday with the Mayor, and the Mayor, well, of course, he will write on our behalf, Auckland Council's behalf, but he is due also meetings with the Minister where he can raise this face to face. So I think we rely on those channels of communication. Doesn't really pay to throw bricks, just do a lot of damage.
With respect, Mr. Chair, a hearing allows both the Mayor or the presenter of the submission and assorted others. Like tomorrow we're doing a submission on the electoral access bill with the disability panel. It allows you to have significant others standing shoulder to shoulder. In this case, I think the whole 20 of us should be at the meeting with the Minister standing behind the Mayor with a brick.
Well, look, the meeting is not arranged, and I will discuss that with, say, Councillor Hulse and Acting Mayor. We'll just see when that meeting can be arranged with the Minister, and we'll follow it up from there. I'm glad that you see the seriousness of the situation as well. That's how it is, I think, for all of us. Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually share Councillor Casey's concern, and nowhere in the resolutions are we basically saying that we're unhappy about the fact that once this has been taken to government, there is no right of reply or response or input. And I really believe that we wouldn't be true to ourselves or Auckland if we didn't include that comment somehow in the recommendations. And if we have no choice, and because time is of essence, I mean, like, you can't look backwards, and that's very unfortunate. But I don't think, you know, I just don't think that what we've got there covers the fact that there are some people in this room very uncomfortable with the fact that the process allows no further input or influence once it's gone to Wellington.
Okay, would you like to just probably amend the words in A then, approve the submission, etc., noting, okay, so if you could just add to, after the words report, comma, noting, and then you outline that with brevity and strong words. We'll just wait for those words, members. Is there an agreement that we need to strengthen? I'm just being reminded, and Director of Strategy Jim Quinn told us yesterday that he was having a further high-level officials meeting with the Ministry tomorrow, so that will be occurring. Councillor Fletcher.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before others actually raise this, I was going to suggest that whilst I understand why you wanted the C included, I felt the wording was somewhat limp, and that if we could also look at the words around that. Request that the Mayor write to the Minister. I mean, it perhaps authorise the Mayor and go a little bit further. This is an occasion, as we all know, we spend so much of our collective time just in compliance with those requirements that are given to us from Wellington. We all agree that this is ridiculous, and I'm wanting for the Mayor to know that he has the full mandate of the councillors and members of the IMSB to actually be very firm with the Minister. So I just would urge you, in the words that you had drafted there, to strengthen them in order that it conveys the genuine frustration of the Auckland Council with this. If officers wish to make comment or give some direction, that would be helpful. But just to request that he, writes a letter, it does seem pretty limp.
Okay, so I've taken out the word request because I think we make the decision, and of course the Mayor will be writing it. So we're authorising the Mayor to write to the Minister conveying, we could just add the words firmly conveying. I'm happy for you to input the words there to strengthen it. Councillor, that doesn't read quite right. John, can we just let's
authorise the Mayor to convey to the Minister for the Environment Auckland Council's considerable displeasure, or something that is quite strong.
okay, we'll just.
And I think what Councillor Fletcher's doing or what Councillor Casey's doing is a bit of everyone saying the same thing.
Now, I'll just go to, Councillor Casey was just going to modify the A, and that actually might address it.
Yeah.
So, Councillor Casey, do you want to...
It goes like this. Goes like this. We've got to approve the submission, and then it would be a small one noting the concern around the 10-day time frame for Auckland Council submission, and 2, noting there is no formal hearing or formal consultation process once the government has decided on its national planning standards.
Okay. Can you just pass that over and we'll type that up and we'll see how it looks. There might be some repeats with the C.
Mr. Chair, so that's the A, and I think also the C around what we want Mr. Goff to do also needs a bit of, as Councillor Fletcher was saying, a little bit, some adjectives with some not very happy words.
Okay, can you take a microphone next time? But I think we've just got you. So we'll just note Councillor Casey's contribution there. Councillor Casey, those words coming up, reflecting your words?
No, just for our submission. We're complaining about our time.
Sorry, can't hear.
We're complaining about the time frame for our submission because we couldn't consult with local boards or Mana Whenua or any other interested community. We don't have the time.
Yeah, I don't even think we need to authorise the Mayor. The Mayor, just support the Mayor, and the Mayor will do it for us. Just support Mayor Phil Goff to strongly convey.
Mr. Chair, I mean, what I was actually trying to convey was the need for the incorporating within this of our collective displeasure. So we put the Mayor in a difficult position if he just has to convey that. What we are seeking to do, I think some of us, is to mandate him that he enjoys the support of all of the councillors and members of the IMSB in really conveying. I mean, a lot of this is sort of diplomatic speak of what we're trying to get him to do. I'd like to go one step further and say, we are, I'm not going to use the words in this whare, but we are seriously concerned, and we want to go further perhaps than just saying the importance around the implementation, but just something a little stronger would be suggested.
I agree with that. I think we can rely on the Mayor to reflect this motion and take that action. He certainly will. He has those relationships, and we all know Mayor Goff, when he is in front of ministers, he is firm if the issue is of a nature that is serious as you are conveying. But look, you
It's about the paper trail, and with great respect to the Mayor...
Okay, give me the words to create the paper trail then.
Right, if you give me a moment, I will write them.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to speak in support of C, and also in support of, I think, what Councillor Fletcher is trying to convey to us. And I just wondered, Councillor Fletcher, if the wordings just at the start of C, just perhaps you started that paragraph with all members of the governing body, therefore support for the Mayor to strongly argue. So that's just my suggestion, but my reason for taking the call, Mr. Chair, was just support the intent of C.
No, thank you. I don't think we can add the words that all members, because that's subject to the vote, you see. If there was unanimous, then it could be, but then you can't go back and add the words. It's just the process. And not all members are here, and we also have independent party statutory board members who are also members of the committee. But I take your point. Councillor Fletcher?
I'm
getting there, good. Members, I'm suggesting that we take item 14, I think then there's just item 15 is procedural, and then we break for lunch. You happy with that? So shall we conclude our agenda? And then we'll leave the wharenui and have some food together. While we're working these words up, Lindley, thanks again for an extremely thorough report. I know that you've been working on this for quite some time with ministry staff, toing and froing. As I said earlier, it's a really thorough analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Chris.
The intention is that what you have there is right, but it's really just to frame it.
Thank you. We'll just take a little moment to finalise that, and then we'll come back to it very shortly. So as the wording goes up, members, is that, are you comfortable with those words? Don't want to make the assumption that we're all on board with that, but if you can, Councillor Casey?
I think we need to flip those two round. It's more important it aligns with the unitary plan first and foremost, and then the time frame. So our main concern is about our unitary plan, and it's the giant threat to it.
This is the C?
Yeah, just flip them round so that the time frame's second.
Okay. Can I just show a look? People comfortable with that?
Just got an issue with displeasure. I mean, obviously.
You don't like displeasure?
Well, concern, substantial concern, something.
Oh, I'm happy with that. I was just trying to find a word
Okay.
that wasn't rude.
Considerable concern.
Discomfort, concern, whatever.
Considerable concern, is it? Serious concern. We'll go with the acting mayor. He's in charge today.
As the mover of the recommendation, I'm happy.
Sorry.
I think any more word crafting and we might entirely lose that.
Yeah, I think we almost need to stop the wordsmithing and get to it.
You've got the intent.
I think we've all spoken to this. So once the words go up, we'll just put it to the vote. Anything else? So we've got 3 items to go. Item 13 is a working party. Members, can I just suggest, we're not quite at item 13, but taking the time, can I suggest that that working party be the chair and deputy chair of this committee, and then the chair or the deputy chair of the Environment and Community Committee, up to 3 local board members and a member of the Independent Maori Statutory Board. Now, how that's come about is when I became aware of this, I originally thought of chairs, deputy chairs of the 3 committees, plus the deputy mayor, IMSB member, and local board representation. I was thinking of 2 members from local boards. The local board chairs have come back and said they'd like equal representation to the councillor representation. That makes it very, very cumbersome. It makes it a small football team. So we're not quite at that item, but I'm just giving you a bit of a heads up. Are you comfortable with the chair and deputy chair of planning, chair or deputy chair of Environment and Community Committee, because as an interface that's 3, plus up to 3 local board members as decided by them, and an independent Maori Statutory Board member. Good. Thank you. Right, back to the words. Landed? Okay, can we all have a look? I think we've done this to death. Councillor Casey, the points you raised are up with the...
One tiny thing, instead of noting a concern, it's noting our concern. We've got lots of them.
Our concern, okay. Okay, we're there? Thank you. Move Councillor Holtz, seconded the acting mayor. And I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Contrary no. Declare that carried. Shall I record that unanimously? Yes.